I don't know too many people who regularly read classic poetry. In part, I think because they're intimidated by it, and in part because they're skeptical of its value to them. And that's why I was so delighted to discover this book, Sound and Sense, An Introduction to Poetry. You'll find a link to it below the video. This book breaks the process of enjoying poetry into simple, accessible steps, concretizing each new step of that process with a striking poem that is well worth reading on its own terms. So I thought it would be fun to take you through the insights that it offers. The book opens with the question, what is poetry? The answer is something that will be refined and expanded upon and concretized throughout the course of the book. But the authors start with a simple point. Poetry, they say, employs language, but it does so in a way distinct from language in all its other uses. What's distinct about the use of language in poetry? Well, as a starting point, they point out that the commonest use of language is for the conveyance or acquisition of information. But information is not the purpose of the language of poetry. What is that purpose? The authors have many ways of putting it. They say poetry sharpens our contact with existence. It helps us to live more deeply and fully and with greater awareness. It increases the range of our experience, and it acts as a glass for clarifying that experience. Now, all those are lovely but very abstract accounts of the power of poetry that are as yet unproven. So, in a first effort to make that point palpable, they offer an example using Alfred Tennyson's poem, The Eagle. Were you to read about eagles in an encyclopedia entry, you'd acquire information about their anatomy, their habitat, their hunting habits, and so on. So what is it uniquely that you get from this?
The Eagle by Alfred Tennyson. He clasps the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun, in lonely lands, ringed with the azure world, he stands. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt, he falls.
Tennyson has not given us information about an eagle. He's given us a vision of it. The setting, the imagery, the words, even the sounds of the words are selected and organized and synthesized into a particular experience of the eagle, and one with meaning behind it. Here, briefly, is how I would describe Tennyson's vision. It is a creature weathered and strong, standing perched on a mountaintop with a godlike proximity to the sun, the world ringed around him as its center. I picture one of those panoramic shots in a film where the scenery seems to be curved around some imposing figure at the middle. Something so formidable as the crashing waves of the ocean are reduced to mere crawling wrinkles under this creature's high magisterial gaze. And then we discover that his still watchfulness was only anticipatory of powerful action, as he swoops down with the force and swiftness of a thunderbolt. So much more could be said about these short, simple lines that are so stocked with meaning. Now consider the difference between the encyclopedia entry on an eagle and this poem. As the authors of Sound and Sense say, the former might allow you to grasp the eagle's feathers, while the latter lets you see its soul. If you were to imagine now hiking into the mountains and seeing an eagle clasping the crag and silhouetted against the sky, you might imagine how the moment could be heightened by hearing the words of Tennyson in your mind. This is the sense in which literature allows us, as the authors of Sound and Sense say, to live more fully, more deeply, more richly, and with greater awareness. That's a first glimpse at the point of poetry, and I hope as we go along it will only become more powerfully clear.